Paintmarine here with another Paintmarine's bookshelf. So I'll be doing 3 stories in this one. The first one, I want to try to do them in kind of timeline order, but with the first 2, they're kind of difficult to place technically, and I'll explain that as I get into it. So they're the Arkunasha War, and please forgive me with these town names and pronunciations. I may fuddle them up a bit. So the Arkunasha War, and then the next one, let me get my notes and things, is the Farsight, and then the final one is the new novel that came out, Farsight, Crisis of Faith, which, spoiler alert, or early spoiler alert of the review, awesome. Loved this book. Awesome. Okay, so as far as the timeline of things, I don't know what's going on. So the Arkunasha War, there's actually 2 versions of this short story, or I guess 2 versions. They're both by Andy Chambers, I believe is the name. Yes, or no, Adam Chambers, excuse me. So they're both by Adam Chambers, and but one is in the book Shazo, which is like a collection of stories, and the other one is like a standalone short story book that you can get off a Black Library, like an EPUB, and it's only like for $5 American, and it's a nice short story and everything, and it's good. But then the difference, though, so there's that version is a really short story. Then there's another Arkunasha War that's in that book, the Shazo. When I read the Farsight short story that's done by Phil Kelly, there at the end of it, they give you an extract of the Arkunasha War from the Shazo book by Adam Chambers, but it's like, at least the extract is like this perspective of some humans running from like the Inquisition because they were on a planet that was sympathetic to the Tau in the Damocles Gulf area. So the reason why that's kind of like, they're both called the same thing, but it appears that one is maybe a different perspective, like from the human perspective of these guys running. And then I don't know if they end up. It doesn't go that far into it in the extract, and I don't have the other book to read it. So I don't know if they end up on Arkunasha or, I don't know. And they're not mentioned in either the Arkunasha War or the Farsight short story, which also fully takes place on Arkunasha. Now, again, kind of trying to bring all this together, in Crisis of Faith, there's many kind of Farsight thinking back to the Arkunasha War and things that happened there. And he mentions there's this time when they had beat the orcs back, and they were just on the verge of tipping the tide and winning the war when the Ethereals came and were like, okay, pull out, we're leaving, we're out of here. And he's like, what? Like, all our guys, like all these lives lost, all these Tau lives lost for the greater good or whatever. And, so he mentions that and how but he was like, okay, we got to listen to the Ethereals, whatever. So they end up leaving, and it was like a big waste of time, essentially, and a loss of lives, thousands of Tau lives for no reason. So he mentions that. But then the story, that's where the stories get kind of confusing. The Arkunasha War, it ends with them, basically they leave, they get, were extracted, or whatever. They have like a distress signal that finally gets answered type of a thing, and they get extracted off the planet. So it doesn't make it sound so much like they were forced to leave, like they were in the Crisis of Faith, like he mentions, like they were forced to leave. And so I don't know. So I was like, okay, well, I read that, and I was like, okay, so maybe they go back, regroup, and then come back and try to take the planet or something. And so I was like, okay, so maybe that's where the Arkunasha War in the Shazo book picks up. So maybe here they retreat, regroup, and then in Arkunasha they come back, and there's like a back and forth between some humans' perspectives and then Farsight's perspectives. I don't know. But to go along with that, so then Farsight, the book Farsight, like they're on Arkunasha the whole time, but it follows Farsight, and it's supposed to explain like some of the characters of the Eight before they were the Eight, and Farsight, and how he got his name Farsight. But it's a completely different story than the Arkunasha short story that is its own standalone thing. So, the biggest, I say one of the notable differences is, there's the war boss that they're fighting in the Arkunasha War. They call war boss Gorbog Gitbiter. Okay, so, but then in the Farsight story, it's Toothjaw. So there's two different war bosses. So the timeline, again, I don't really know. And in both of them, Farsight shows up on the planet for the first time. Like it's not like he was in one and then he came back and then they're like, oh, hey, you're welcome back. Yeah, so I'm going to start off with the Arkunasha War. I'll go into that and things that I found out of that it was interesting. If you are a big Tau fan, you may know some of these little points of facts. Like I said, I'm pretty new to reading the lore. Most of what I know is from the codexes, but I'm just going to point out some little extra tidbits from the story itself and just from like Tau perspective, culture, how their military, all that stuff works that I found interesting and everything. So let's see here. And then after that, we'll go into more of the Farsight book. So, or short story. So the Arkunasha War is a really short story. Like I said, it's only like $5 American. So there's not a lot to it. You can read it pretty quickly. So in it, the best way I can say is it's kind of like your common traditional commander kind of gets sent out to take control of this misfit unit. So he gets to Arkunasha, and he's supposed to train and mentor and kind of put these misfit fire warriors, if you will, back on track. Because he shows up and he feels like they're undertrained and they're just not up to par. So let's see some of my notes here. So they do mention, and I'm sure people are familiar with this that are Tau players, that when he gets there, like, so he gets to the unit, the Shazui, which is like their sergeant, is a female Tau, and he says that the selection of males and females of a young age, few probably even close to their first trial of fire. So I know there's different these things they call trial by fire for the fire warrior cast that essentially kind of elevates them in their jobs. 'Cause I think so then it goes on later on. It says it takes about 3 trials by fire before you can reach Shazo, so like commander level, which is interesting. So they don't really ever explain too much what a trial by fire is, if that means being in battle or not. But only 3 trials of fire seems a little on the low end if you're going to be a commander, like Farsight level. There's a nice exchange where Farsight talks with the Earthcast about the maintenance of their weapons and battle suits. He's like, hey, I know it's pretty taboo that we should work on our own suits and armor and equipment, but if you can teach us, because we're so undermanned on this colony, if you can teach us how to basically take care of our equipment, which I think was kind of weird that they're not really taught that. I think most militaries try to give a basic understanding of field maintenance of your equipment to their people, but I guess it's a kind of a taboo thing, and the Earthcast just strictly takes care of all the equipment. So anyway, he makes this kind of exchange. He's like, hey, if you help us do this, we'll help you with the other workload, because they're trying to, build defenses and just kind of get ready for things. At some point along this, then the orcs start landing because they're in their asteroid ships. They're in disrepair and they need more metal and stuff. And they detect metal down on the planet, so they decide to land down on the planet and look for the metal, not realizing at all that there's Tau or anything on this planet. Now, Arkunasha in general is a dust planet. It has like a red dust, and they find that the red dust is rust. That there used to be an ancient civilization that they think covered most of the planet, but nobody knows what happened to them. They're completely disappeared. Nothing's left, and all the dust that covers the planet is made up of rust and basically, so essentially metals that were destroyed somehow by something, but nobody knows what. And it states there's no other living animal or creature on this planet. So essentially, it's a dead planet. So the Tau come and try to, excuse me, try to come and recolonize and revitalize this planet. Another notable thing, which is an ongoing theme, which may just be because I've only been reading the Farsight stories because he's my favorite, but for lack of a better term, ethereals are douchebags. They're arrogant, narcissistic, and pompous. I mean, and they all, like, all the Tau, like, just buckle for them. But now, I know there's been talk there, like, people don't know if they have kind of a lower-end psychic abilities or not necessarily, or if it's, pheromones, pheromonal? Yeah, pheromones that they release that allow them to kind of be suggestive and control other Tau. But yeah, it's definitely an ongoing theme in all the books, and you can see as Farsight begins to start to, like, you can see it as the wheels are turning. He's like, I don't know about if they're telling us everything exactly. So in the book they later call him Shova, which in Tau is translated to Farsight, meaning that he can see in advance usually what the enemy's going to do, and that's how he gets his name, because he starts to be able to predict and notices the patterns in what seems to be just the chaos of the orcs. So he earns the name Shova, or they call him Oshova, which is Farsight. Now, I found that interesting. I don't know if there's any connection or not at all, but I'm also, being a sci-fi fan, nerd, geek, whatever, was a huge fan of Stargate SG-1, this TV series, and Teal'c, the Jaffa in that show, becomes a traitor. He betrays against the Goa'uld, and they call him a Shova. Now, I looked at the spelling, is totally different. It's like Sholva, like SHOL apostrophe VA, Sholva, but it always sounds like Shova. It's kind of how it's pronounced when some characters say it. So I don't know if it's Sholva or Shova, but either way, I thought it sounded so similar to Shova for Farsight that I was like, maybe there's something there, maybe not, but I just liked trying to make the connection, like, oh, Teal'c was a Shova, which meant traitor, and Farsight, which in Tau is Shova, and he becomes a traitor. I don't know, but I thought that was kind of a cool way. What else we got? Oh, so there's like a kind of an end battle fight scene where they lure these orcs into this what they call slipway, which was erosion cut channel confined by high rock. So essentially, to me, I thought of the hot gates in like the 300 Spartans, because you have a small number of orcs. When is there ever a small number of orcs, right? Small number of Tau versus a large number of orcs, and they funnel them in and just crossfire and cut them down pretty good. In this, at one point, Farsight has a little bit more foreshadowing, because he's Farsight. He mentions that the Tau Empire will remember his name, and when they get ready to leave, and they, the transports come to take them off planet. Farsight, he talks of returning, and that's where I kind of draw the conclusion, like, well, maybe this is the opening of the actual Arkunasha war. Like, maybe this was just kind of like a preface a prologue, whatever you will, to the Arkunasha War in the Shazo. I don't know, but it's very different. So key things is like they talk about it being a dead planet, nothing there, and so forth. So now we go to the Farsight book. Now I struggled through this one. I don't know why. It just seemed like so. It's 13 chapters and an epilogue, and they're each chapter's about 5 pages long. It's $15 American on the Black Library. It was a good read. I'd say near the end. I don't know. I just kind of it just seemed pretty slow to really get going. And then the other problem is I think I was trying to analyze too much, like where in the timeline or how does this fit, because this is nothing like what Arkunasha was described like in the other short story I read, because it's still a desert planet with rust, and they talk about some other thing was there, but there's these giant dust like hurricane tornado things that just cover the planet, and they don't talk about those at all in the other one. Also, the orcs are already on the planet doing these raids, and then Farsight comes. Well, he's not Farsight. Then he's was it Osho or Oshazo or anyway. Prior to earning his title, he comes to the planet, and the orcs are already there. They don't show up after he's been there training this other unit, and he doesn't reply that he's coming back after he had left before. Plus, he doesn't have his Farsight name yet. Yeah, so I don't know. It was confusing. I don't understand quite where yet in the timeline this is supposed to fit. But anyway, let me find my notes on it. So it was a good story. It wasn't horrible. It was just really slow in the beginning, and then when we get to the final battle scene chapters, I was like, oh, here we go. Now it's finally something's happening. Now I don't need action the whole book. But I don't know, it just kind of dragged. I don't have any other better term than that. And honestly, I think I was just getting frustrated with how different it was from the original or the other story. And I don't know which one was written first either, so there could be some difference there. But they talk about Shavastos, who you may know as a female Tau crisis suit commander of the 8. However, in this, they say he and his, suggesting it's a male and not the same Shavasto as in the 8. So there was that. Another thing in there was at some point someone, I can't remember who it was, gets their hand injured and says they can't control their suit as well. Now that might be different earlier versions of the suits where they had more hand control as well, because they talk about both. They use hands. There is some like feet movement and eye movement. I know a lot of people say, oh, the suits are only controlled by eye flicking movement. That would be a crazy way to pilot. I mean, I don't see how like when the Tau don't get out, they're like, oh, their eyes are like going all over the place. Because if that's the only way they controlled, but some sort of augmentation of everything using the eye flick movements and hand controls and stuff like that, I can see makes sense. And they mentioned that in this, and maybe in earlier, evolutions of the suits, things changed. But all right. So then you have, I'm gonna fudge this name up, Oblotai or Obloti. I guess I would say Oblotai. He's alive. He is not the artificial intelligence that we all know and love as Oblote 9-0. He's just Oblotai. And let me phrase it, at least for most of this, a good portion of the story. They mentioned there's a water caste member. His name is Vral, or Ural. I don't know. I can't read my hand right now. It's either a V or a U. He studied Orc, and that's the whole reason why he was sent to Arkunasha. And he attempts to do a trade with the orcs of weapons to kind of get them to, leave the planet, essentially leave them alone. And of course, the orcs are like, no, shoot him, kill him and his fire warriors that were with him. And then when they're on their way there, they talk about these black vultures circling them, which again contradicts the other story with there's a dead planet, there's nothing else on it. So now I'm like, okay, where did these black vultures come from? Alright, so and then back to Oblotai, or Avlotai, yeah. He talks about his mentor name was Flamechild, and he was killed in battle, and he blames Flamechild's AI drone as not being able to save him in time and protect him, and so that's why he has a distrust of artificial intelligence, which is important because, as we know, he later becomes a artificial intelligence, which Farsight disagrees with 100%, because it wasn't. He knows how much his friend hated artificial intelligence, so he finds it an offense to his warrior spirit. But of course, Elvesa, who later Ovesa, does not see an issue with this. He doesn't understand because he's very scientific centric, and he's just like, but you still get to have your friend. Then I'm helping you out. He does it in good faith, but fumbles it. And he is killed. So again, obviously these are spoiler alerts. Oblotai is killed by a orc that they bring back, and they essentially is a Frankenstein orc. They accidentally reanimate this orc inside their base. Then they have to fight it when they're not in their suits because they were doing studies on it. And he gets killed by this orc. And then Alessa tries to... It's an experimental thing at this point. He tries to download his consciousness essentially to an AI. And he says 93% data transfer before biological remnants non-viable. So the Oblotai that we know is only 93% of the Tau that Farsight knew and loved. So, after that happened, Farsight, that's when he painted his suit red as a remembrance of his friend's blood loss. The blood that was, because he had to use his bonding knife, which I guess was very, I don't know, sacrilegious or taboo, however you want to say it, to use their bonding knife in battle. But he had no other weapon, so he had to defeat the orc with that. But the orc, he jabbed the orc in the neck with this knife. The orc pulled it out and ended up using that knife to kill Oblotai. And so the blood of his friend is on his bonding knife. Yeah, so he does not like that, and he, but so as kind of remembrance of his friend and just the Tau lives lost in general later on Arkunasha, he paints his suit red, which, as we know, later on all the Farsight Enclave have suits of red in remembrance of those of Arkunasha. As they go on, they find out that these dust storms are, they kick up, and they're not just dust storms. They have like these razor sharp pieces of metal in them that are cutting people up. And when they come across orc patrols, they get caught in them. They find their dead bodies, and all the blood has been drained from them. But all the other type of fluid, all the viscous and other bile, all that other fluid is still in the bodies. Just all the blood's been sucked out. So then they start to find out, oh well, these dust storms must have been made by whoever was here before to defeat an orc invasion, and that's why these dust storms keep kicking up whenever there's a battle. So they start to say, well, they're sentient. So yeah, they start to kind of come up with a plan on how to use the dust storms, and yeah, so they start to try to kind of use them to their advantage. And there's a big final battle scene where they get like this big storm. They kind of use it to help them defeat the orcs, and then to kind of shield them. And then Farsight goes up against Toothjaw, and his suit gets pretty much destroyed. And he still doesn't have his new, like the suit that we all see where he's got the plasma rifle with the shield and his sword. Yet he has a shield generator, but he is equipped with the plasma rifle and a fusion blaster. So those are his weapons that he uses then. But anyway, he ends up outside of his suit, unprotected from the dust storm, and then Oblotai shows up as a broadside, and opens up, and he gets in because now Oblotai is now an AI broadside. So he gets in, and he's got a rail rifle and the 2 plasma rifles on his shoulder. He starts shooting at Toothjaw, and anyway, Toothjaw basically gets in close combat, destroys his weapons, and then Farsight has this plan where he gets over to his older suit, takes off the shield generator, is able to get it connected to his broadside, and makes kind of like a shield knife, like uppercut thing, and uses the shield energy essentially to lop off the head of Toothjaw. It was a very kind of a cool scene that's described. But yeah, that's essentially that story, and it ends kind of with them discussing like what next. It doesn't end with them leaving or saying the plan's lost. Like again, like I don't like the 2 stories don't match up. So yeah, but there some other insight that I thought was kind of cool or interesting anyway, that Farsight talks about these lessons of pure tide that he kind of shares is where the foe has strength, blind it. Where the foe has certainty, confuse it. When the foe seeks you out, deceive it. And when the foe shows weakness, slay it. Just some interesting lessons of pure tide in case anybody plans on climbing. I think it's Mount Kanji to see Farsight. So those were those 2 stories. Like I said, they're good. I enjoyed the Arkunasha War, the shorter story, better, just because it's got that classic Band of Misfits. Or it kind of reminded me of the Clint Eastwood in Heartbreak Ridge, where he shows up and he takes over that squad of like these misfit recon Marines, and he shapes them up and gets them to their potential. It's what it reminded me of. Or you could even go on the other end in like the Bad News Bears, but maybe not so much that way because the coach was kind of his own ragtag as well, and so both the baseball team and the little league team and them come together. Well, anyway, so next we have Farsight: Crisis of Faith. Now, like I said, I'm still digging through everything. As far as I know, this is the largest novel, an actual only novel, that's fully based on Farsight himself. Yeah, I mean, I know there's other stories, obviously I'm starting to read them, but I think this is I can't say with certainty, but I think this is like the first full on novel featuring Farsight. So, the Damocles Crusade has happened. The Empire of Man has taken, or the Imperium of Man has taken the Enclave world on the other side of the Damocles Gulf back, and now the Tau are out for revenge. They want their planets back. So they put together a huge fleet, and they're going to go out, and they're going to take the planets back, and they're putting Farsight in command because they don't like him. The Ethereals do not like Farsight, and essentially they're banking on him never coming back. Tau do not have an ability to travel in the warp or faster than light, so they go into stasis when they travel. And in this book it says they only have like 40-year lifespans, and as much as a normal human, but because there is an Inquisitor in their ranks that they don't know about that's undercover as a Guvesa. Not, I guess, I don't know if Guvesa, yeah, she's a Guvesa. She's not a fire or anything. She's like, because they know she's a psyker in the Tau, because they don't have really any presence in the warp and they don't have psychers. They like having her because she's like an adept psyker, and they're trying to learn what they call mind war or mind power or something like that, because they just don't understand. They don't fathom when a psyker shows up, a mind warrior, as they call them. So they have her, and she kind of is, feeding information to the Imperium. But yeah, so they get this huge fleet together, and they're going to go out, and they're going to try to take the worlds back. And so then there's the Scar Lords are the main Space Marine chapter in this. They're kind of tracking them along, and they get information from her, and then they come and like attack them on their way. And anyway, so I don't know how to explain it other than so let's go into some interesting things I found was I'll look it up here. So page 65, I know everybody likes to make fun of Space Marines, and I guess there's not just Space Marines that do it, but for whatever reason the Games Workshop likes to model characters without their helmets on. And everyone's like, well, they could just get sniped and whatever else, which, well, obviously, but okay. So on page 65, Oblote says, in disbelief, he said, because, alright. So they call, and I'm not even close to getting this right, Guransha, I think, is what they call Space Marines. So the spectral Oblotai did not flinch and fired a salvo of missiles in return. They soared down in winding trails, seeking out the translucent Guransha's comrades hunkered down in the ruins of a shattered hexadome. The hollow missiles exploded with such force the Space Marines' headless corpses were flung into the road. I still can't believe they weren't wearing helmets, said Oblote in disbelief. So, anyway, I thought that was funny because, a lot of people say, like, oh, they would just get sniped or whatever, and sure enough. Now, one thing about the Scar Lords, as their name suggests, they're all into scarring. It's a sign of battles, status in their chapter. Like, they talk about their chapter master is, like, missing, like, this whole part of, like, his cheek, and, like, when he, like, you can see, like, his teeth and everything through his teeth from an old battle. So then we have another similar thing on page 272. Alright, so here we go. So, on another viewing hex, Space Marines in extra heavy armor, not dissimilar to Crisis battlesuits, stormed a team of stealthers. The bulky shields of the Guransha were raised to deflect cascades of burst cannon fire. Farsight blink froze the image. The Space Marine barking orders at his fellows had forsaken his helm. So again, without his helm, he sent the still to Oblote across the quadrant for his amusement. So he took a picture of this guy without his helmet just to get a laugh out of his AI buddy. At this time, he's not a. He's what was he? Oblote 3-0. So that means there's been obviously 2 other versions of him that have been destroyed or replaced. And then he goes on, Farsight had seen a similar phenomenon in the tankers of the Imperial Armoured divisions. Their commanders like to lean from their cupolas of their vehicles even in the middle of an engagement. So, again, we've all seen that as well, like from the models, showing like the tank commanders out pointing or whatever, and so they like to kind of point it out and poke fun at it, which is kind of funny. So next on my notes of things, I have ethereals equal douchebags. Again, that's just the going rate with these guys. There's a scene really early, maybe like chapter 2 or 3, where an ethereal makes this this female Tau kill herself because he didn't like the way that he was disrespected in the Element Council. He's like, so he like tells her to take out your body knife, now stab it in your gut, and she can't. She like talks about how like she had like this fog and like she knew what she was doing but she didn't, and then she kills herself. It's like, well, that's very commissarial of you. So then there's talk about the Code of Fire. Some people may know the Code of Fire with Fire Warriors is their methods of battle. I want to say they mentioned it. I kind of wrote it down and then forgot what page or to write down the number because I came back to it and wrote it down. Master Puretide, he is like, I don't know, you call him the Mr. Miyagi, the master of all the styles. He's the only fire warrior who has mastered all of the styles of the Code of Fire. He's the most um, known fire warrior. He's the most famous, whatever you want to say, within their within their caste and in general in Tao society. And I believe, I want to say it's 12. I'm pretty sure they said there's 12 different types of the Code of Fire, 12 different styles of battle and fighting. Now, they don't really mention any of them other than Farsight, which most people know these two, the Montka, and then Shadow Sun, the Kion. Montka meaning the killing blow. So essentially, prioritizing targets, taking them out, and then mopping up the rest. So if you take out leaders and heavy units like that, and then you take out the rest, and then Shadow Sun, the Kaon, which is the patient hunter. So stealth, deceit, that kind of thing, like trick your enemy into an area where you have your units in hiding and stealth, and then drop the trap. Another form that they mention is I believe it's pronounced the Monat, also, which they call the Army of One. So essentially like an assassin, and they have Kaias is one of 3 that were direct pupils of Puretide at the I said it earlier, Kanji, the mountain in Valora, which is where Farsight comes from, his home planet. And then they do talk about this other pupil, or I guess you could say apprentice, maybe, I don't know how you would say it exactly, but of Shadow Sun, Viorlas Moat, or the Burning Chameleon, which is a student, a student of the Kaon and stealth hunting. So I thought that was pretty interesting. It'd be cool to know what the rest of them are. I think it was the Codex in the Farsight Enclave supplement that they had, and the Moscow, which came out a little later, was essentially the same. There's talk about Farsight. I don't know if he developed or if he kind of started mastering another technique called the Way of the Short Blade, which it was close combat, which Tau are not known for, but Farsight, at least, if he didn't master it, he brushed up on it and got better at it. So that was mentioned at least on the Codex side of things. So, continuing on with other things, bond mates. Now, I still can't find a ton on this. There's different things. I know it seems like they have their bonding knife, and you have bond mates, and it sounded, at first, most of what I read, it sounded like your bond mates are kind of like, I don't know, when you're in a unit and you got really good close friends, you've been through a lot, and you become bonded, and so you take this knife and you do like the ritual with the bonding knife, and so essentially you become like bonded. So like when you see like the Cadre Fireblade, and he's got that bonding knife and the model like up, like he's like showing it like maybe to the rest of the fire warriors they're in his squad, maybe they're all bond mates because they're all been in it together. So that was like my initial impression of the bond mates and the bond knife and what all that means. But the book is kind of, there's a moment that was kind of suggestive of there's more to it than that, to maybe it doesn't have anything to do with that at all, or I don't know, maybe I'm way off the bat and just read it wrong, but it almost seemed like in a way the Tau, and it kind of would make sense because of the way the Ethereals have control over the society, but it almost sounded like they practice a form of polygamy or group marriages, where it's not like one male and a bunch of females, or one female and a bunch of males. It's multiple males and females all bonded together in a family unit where they're bond mates. and so there's not really like any monogamous, one and one. And the reason why I say that would make sense as far as how the Tau society seems to work with the ethereals is because the ethereals control the population and say, okay, fire, the fire caste, we need more warriors, you guys need to breed more. And so it would make more sense for, genetic diversity, I guess, in a way for them. And for them to basically, and it doesn't, obviously, this is getting way into the weeds. It doesn't talk about like Tau pregnancy cycles, like if they, we don't know how they technically reproduce. Do they lay eggs? Do they carry them like we do as human, and give live birth? Do they carry more than one? Is it like a litter type of a thing, like other animals in on our world? Like, do they have a litter of Tau? And is the cycle quick? Because they have pretty short lifespans. As far as the book says, they only live for 40 years. So, like, what age do they start bonding? How quickly do they mature? There's like a ton of things in there. So there's so many things. Like, so, do they mature quickly? Are they, but then there's all that too. Like, so how quickly do they learn knowledge, language, all that stuff? And then, so it seemed like it would be a good idea as far as genetic diversity to if you're going to have a culture that is somewhat, I guess, monogamous within their bonded family, I guess. But again, like, I don't know, maybe I just read way off into left field with that, and that's not their society at all. I actually think that sounds kind of like I like it because it's different than the way but like the human culture, the Imperium. Obviously, on Earth now, there's different cultures and different ways and how that works. But in the Imperial Man in 40K, they also don't really seem, because I can't even imagine, well, let's settle down and have a family in the world that is 40K, the universe that is 40K. Like, I don't even know how the Guard has people to join and how people just like, you know what, I don't want to bring another person into this universe. This is crazy. But people do somehow. I don't know. But anyway. So I like that. It makes them more alien, makes them more diverse, different, if that is in fact how it is. But I don't know. I know deep down I'm saying, you know what, that is how it is because I want them to be that different. So yes, they are. They do have these group marriages and stuff, and maybe their pregnancy cycles are only like a few months, and they have a litter of kids, and then they can have more. I don't know. Shoot, maybe like seahorses. For all we know, maybe the males carry the young. I don't. Who knows? There are supposed to be like, everyone says they're descended from fish or whatever, so maybe they're like more like the seahorse than the fish. All right. So, some of the names to mention that are in this one: Brave Storm. He is technically, I guess, kind of dead. I think during the first Damocles Crusade, he was burnt and wounded pretty badly, and so he is on life support in his suit. You can find that in the Codex information or the supplements as well. But in this one, he is armed with what do they call it? Onger Gauntlet. So like one of the very few kind of close combat power fist type weapons on a crisis suit. So he has that, and he talks about he squishes a lot of Space Marines with that. It's pretty epic. I would love if they had a model or had some way to model it. I saw some cool artwork with it. I may attempt to make one myself just for fun. I know people are like, it's not in the Codex anymore. Well, it's not in the Index. The Codex, at the time of this video, has not come out yet. So yeah, we'll get to that. Let's see, Bright Sword is a clone. Yeah, so that was an interesting thing. So it sounds like Bright Sword seems to get killed a lot. I don't know. I don't know. So, let me see. I have on here. Oh, page 320. So I believe that was because they describe Bright Sword's crisis suit as having a mural painted on it, and then later, when they get a new crisis suit for Bright Sword, it's painted with flames, which is interesting because I've never seen that depicted in any of the artwork. But I could also see like maybe they don't depict it that way because if anybody later on the sub commander Torch Star with the dual flamers, uh, if anybody should have a flame muraled crisis suit should be her. All right, then I have again obviously Oblote 3 Tech. Oh, he at the end of the book has this pretty successful plan with Farsight and has to sacrifice himself. But of course, he has like a link and he downloads himself and to another broadside suit and becomes Oblote 4 0. Page 153, I mentioned they talk about Space Marine vehicles and like flying craft and how they are an insult to aerodynamics. So another community poke that a lot of people have complained or have issues with, like they're too boxy. There's no way that thing would fly and yada yada yada. So another fun poke I think of the community. The Space Marine vehicles are an insult to fly. Let's see, at page 146 and 155, the Scar Lord's chant. Let me see, I'll look that up real quick. It's kind of an interesting kind of like pre-battle chant that they kind of do. Let me see. Alright, so one of the chants is, "With the Emperor's grace we suffer new scars," called out Kalos. "It is our duty to earn them," came the response from his battle brothers. "With the weapons of truth we smite the foe, our purpose to hunt and slaughter. With the blood of the friend we cover our blades. It is given to us to anoint them. With pride we bear our wounds to the doomed. Let them drown in fear as we slay them." So that was a very interesting little chant that they have. Page 162, again, it's another example of the suits being controlled by the eye movements and body movements. A main character, which I have not mentioned yet, is a watercast poor Malcor. I think it's Malcor. I kind of scribbled that one on there. Anyway, he's a very predominant member in it, and I can give you a quick, I guess another spoiler alert. Pretty big plot spoiler alert. So I'll give you a second. If you don't want to hear it, pause and skip ahead a little bit. But in the beginning, they've come across a what do they call it? It's not their warp engine. It's the I can't now. It's the device that keeps them safe when they're traveling through the warp. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, the Tau discover it, and they're trying to figure out what it is, and they're trying to read these inscriptions, and they call this Watercast member because he's like a translator of Gothic. He comes and he's kind of reading the inscriptions, and they're like, oh, well, these just seem to be blessings and all this. He notices like this weird liquid on it, and he touches it, and he gets like thrown back and like burnt and all this and all that. Well, come to find out, whatever that liquid is or whatever, it was possessed by like a demon of the warp, and then he is now possessed, and he like later goes back to his house, and he like mutilates his tongue and forks it, and then whatever reason, like the demon is it's a follower of Zeech, and it can't tell lies. So if anybody asks him anything, it directly, like he answers them directly. So anyway, and then he goes around, he goes on these killing rampages, killing all these Tau, and kind of nobody really catches on to him until kind of the very end. But yeah, so Tau can be possessed by the demons, and the demon mentions in there too, like, you know, he's trying to win his favor back to Zeech, and he is going to offer up these Tau half souls. And essentially, so again, like most people, like as most know in the fluff, the Tau don't have a great presence in the warp. There's some talk that the Tau are actually engineered by the Eldar because of this reason, because the Eldar are trying to fight again, you know, so they wanted something that won't have a presence in the warp. So, yeah, but I guess they do have a presence. It is a small presence, but there is a presence of the Tau in the warp, and that's why he calls them like these half souls. So if he can get enough of these half souls, maybe he can win favor back with Zeech. So he's kind of prodding things along in his own way. So you kind of have like two things. You got the Inquisitor kind of slipping things to the Imperium, and then you got this guy doing his thing, and yeah, so they got like all these people working against him, and Farsight's kind of clueless for the most part, but yeah. Let's see, page 322. Can try to look it up. I just wrote smite ? So I'm trying to remember the exact example, but I do know like when I read it, I was like, oh, so is this like an example of what like smite is like in the fluff? Okay, so they have a librarian, the Scarlords do, and he like fires this energy at Farsight, and it says the Space Marine leader, a noseless horror whose face was crisscrossed with scar tissue, outstretched a gauntlet. A blue ball of flame appeared in his palm. It shot outward to strike Farsight in the chest. Excuse me. Incredibly, the flaming ball penetrated Farsight's energy shield as if it were not there. Alerts beeped as a foul smell permeated the control cocoon. The damage control hollow Doppel registered a serious wound by the internal diagnostic, and the fireball had burned through several layers of ablative material on the battlesuit's chest and chewed into its alloy beneath. So I thought it was kind of an interesting, maybe a potential version of Smite. I don't know what exactly they would call it that, but I don't know. And then game-wise, I would say, well, that sounds like a Smite. It went through, his invulnerable save and caused a mortal wound. And then finally, on page 329, we get like the first like kind of full on description of the armor. Now earlier they do talk about the Scar Lords, their sigil being a skull with like these crisscrossing like lightning bolts, kind of making like the scar appearance on the skull, and it's on a terracotta field, so like a reddish brown field with a skull and lightning bolts kind of going through it. But then that's it. They don't explain like the armor or anything else. And then finally, on page 329, they have white armor. So white armor, shoulder pads are reddish brown with the skull and the lightning bolts. So that leaves a lot of people like, oh, maybe they're White Scar successors, because they don't say what successor chapter they are from or what they're successors of. However, I tend to lean more toward Ultramarines, because they are talking to an Ultramarine captain earlier in the book and kind of coordinating with him, and then they talk that they were at the Damocles with the Ultramarines, and was it, I think, Sons of Medusa, which are also Ultramarine, and they fought with so they talk about how they fight with the Ultramarines, and they were with another Ultramarine successor, and then they're taking orders from a captain of the Ultramarines as they try to coordinate intercepting this Tau fleet headed to the Damocles Gulf. So I don't know. They don't, like I said, they don't say. It's kind of up to anybody's guess. Their armor colors and style suggest potentially White Scars. The description of what they look like, because a lot of people think like the White Scars are very Mongolian-esque, if you will, or even Dothraki, because they're based on bikes and stuff. But I didn't really get that from the the Scar Lords. Other than they have white armor, they have kind of a lightning bolt design, kind of like the White Scars have with the red on their armor, kind of the zigzag and lightning bolt style, with their also the lightning bolt on their icon. But I don't know, they just seem like otherwise, when their faces aren't horribly disfigured and scarred, like that, they're more of a I would say like the Ultramarines, like brother that they don't want to accept because of the mutilation that they do, which isn't normally a thing that you hear of with Space Marines. The only other, I guess, chapter is like one of my favorite and biggest is probably the Salamanders. They do firebrands to mark kind of successes in battles and stuff like that. So I guess, they do have that kind of version of scarring, but these guys are like the librarian, like his nose is gone. The chapter master, like half his face was gone. It was very interesting. Another quick fact before I close this up is the original chapter master of the Scar Lords is actually trapped in stasis with a Tau assassin, which I thought was kind of cool. And like they have him on their ship with them eternally locked, essentially in stasis, because the assassin had started to kill, or I don't know, like I don't know what it didn't really explain what. It just kind of like he had actually like if he wasn't in stasis right now, he would be dead because they wouldn't be able to save him if they took him out of stasis, because he was like, I don't know if he had a knife or something was already like jabbed into him or whatever he was using. So, but they were able to get into a stasis, like locked. The two of them were locked in this stasis bubble, or whatever you want to say, until they could figure out a way to save their chapter master. So then this other, like I read his name was Kalos, is their current chapter master. Which, another big spoiler, by the end of the book, the Scar Lords are kind of not a thing. They pretty much get all wiped out. So there might be some of them still around. Maybe they get taken back by the Ultramarines or folded into some of the other successor chapters. But by the end of the book, they're pretty much decimated pretty well. But yeah, so great book. Awesome. I'm going to actually, let me pause real quick. I'm going to cut away and I'm going to go get my Farsight model that I finished, because as I was reading, I just got super motivated. I was like, oh, you know what? It's been a year since I've worked on my Tau. I've got everything kind of painted, but I need to finish basing everything, and then I just need like little details on a lot of the stuff anyway. But I had to finish my Cold Star Farsight conversion. But anyway, let me grab it real quick and show you. I see I've used a lot of different bits and stuff, but yeah, I've posted some pictures of him up on the page. Let me kind of see here. This light here is kind of there. That's better. There. All right. So yeah, so there he is. Like I said, I used a Cold Star suit for the base. Then that the shield is from the new Imperial on the hover drone is what I used for the shield. And yeah, green stuff like the little I don't know, banner thing coming off there. And then for his sword, it's actually a Wraith Knight, or not Wraith Knight, Wraith Lord sword that I cut like the top off of and kind of shaved down. And then this part is part of the staff from the Ethereal from there. And then, as I said, as you can see down here, like this Ultramarine from the 8th Company, because I believe it's on Damocles, that he almost pretty much gets assassinated on there. So, all right, well, that's the end of this one. This is probably a pretty long one because I went on quite a few rants with, like I said, it was very confusing, the timeline of everything. Now, obviously, this does take place after the Arkunasha, because we have Oblote is now an AI, and they're going to the Damocles to take it back. So this takes place after the Damocles campaign, and the first of the Enclave worlds gets taken back by the Imperium. Yeah, and then the other two is a muddled mess of I don't know which order they go in, but I would say like I really enjoyed the Arkunasha War short story. It's super quick, and then the other one was good. It was kind of slow, but my biggest thing is I just couldn't get over the timeline thing. I don't know really how it worked, and like the other one, I guess I was able to accept more because to me, like when they left, I could see like, okay, well maybe they come back. Maybe they're gonna come back. So now the next step is I need to read the story in the Chazot book and see if they connect, and if they do, because they're the exact same name by the exact same author. So maybe they connect, and it'll explain more, and yeah. So that'll probably be something I'll have to do here in the future. So that way I can relay that information to you guys. Alright, well, thank you for watching. Thanks for sticking with this video, as it's probably, I'm sure, like I said, a long one. And the next book coming up on the bookshelf is the Shroud of Night. Excited for this one because it's Alpha Legion, Probably my favorite trader legion. Although I'm a believer that they're not technically horribly 100% traders. I think they're kind of on their own program, but yeah, I don't know. I like to believe they're not necessarily traders, but we'll see. All right, well, until next time.